Hello, BookTube. As you can see, I have yet another guest. This
Hello.
is my friend Sam, who's been on this channel many, many times, but there are quite a few who are new to this channel. I am getting new subscribers.
You're allowing new subscribers?
I don't understand why, but they appear to be liking something. Those of you who are brand new, Sam's an old friend of mine. He's also a book critic. We are two of the only 100% professional book reviewers left in the country where we don't have a side gig. You don't teach at NYU.
No.
I've given up my hand modeling job. Don't do anything of the kind. Just review books. And we are going to answer a bunch of questions that Hannah from Hannah's Books submitted for our consideration. And I asked her when she emailed me the questions, well, why don't you just come here and ask Sam these questions yourself? And she said, I quite despise him.
Yes. Nose pointed straight in the air.
Maybe she said, I quite despise you. These little details, I can't expect her to remember every little detail. I don't remember which it was. She despises one of us.
But if these questions are from Hannah, they're mostly going to be about pop music and
I know.
comic book films.
I know. She's such a valley girl.
Yeah.
Let's see what the first one is. I glanced at these just to make sure they weren't only about OnlyFans. Number one, tell us about a couple of books you've read so far this year that have intrigued you. They can be old or new, fiction or nonfiction, reviewed or not. Boy, oh boy, that parenthetical clarification really shows how dedicated you are to your job. There's no old stuff with you. There's no non-reviewed stuff with you. Is there? Do you ever do
books that
totally
I've read
off-reservation pleasure reading?
Not a lot of it.
I really have the time.
I do. If there's I can do like occasional things, books of essays or things like that. I can read parts of them. But yeah,
Has anything stuck out this year?
Yeah, there have been good books. Something I just read. It is called. I'm going to butcher the title. No, it is called "We Pretty Pieces of Flesh," which is a slightly overdone Shakespearean title, but it is by an English writer called Colwell Brown, and the whole thing is written in a really, really thick Yorkshire dialect, which I suppose is not a selling point if I say it like that, but it's really well done. It's done really poetically and really comically, and it's just there's sort of vignettes about high school age girl.
That was good?
It was really good.
Oh, wow.
Really good. Did you ever read... I mean, I don't know if you like this author, but it reminded me of the first time I ever read Irvine Welsh.
Oh,
and
no
he
kidding.
writes in that really thick Edinburgh accent,
right.
where you read it and you spend the first 5 pages going, I literally don't understand what I'm reading. It's a foreign language. And then you read more, and then you realize you have acclimated to the language. And
right.
You understand
and with
it.
early Irvine Welsh, not only have you acclimated to the language, but there's a reason to acclimate. There's something there beyond just the phonetic playing around, which is really nice.
His early books are good. I agree. I think they're good.
So this book is like that?
It's like that. You read it and you think, this is a bizarre and off-putting sort of dialect, and I don't, there's no articles like there's the doesn't appear anywhere in the book because it's always
nor anywhere in Yorkshire.
Exactly, because it's always contracted into the word before it, so you have to, and there's a lot of things like that. And it's really well done, and and it's not just the dialogue is like that. The entire narration is like that.
Give them the title one more time.
We Pretty Pieces of Flesh, which I think comes from Romeo and Juliet, maybe. I think they're in a school play at some point, so I think it comes from that. But
I've had very, very few actual real high points in my reading so far. I keep telling myself the year is young. I'm going to tell myself that at the end of March. Then I'll have to come up with another excuse. I read a book called Cold Kitchen. I mentioned it on this channel before about a woman who travels all over the world for her job, but she periodically comes back to her subterranean kitchen in Edinburgh. So the book is a lot about the meals that she cooks there while her beagle stares at her from the floor. And so it ends up, by the two-thirds part of the book, it ends up being also a dog book. But I also read a big dual biography of Hannibal and Scipio Africanus, the man who defeated him. Did you get to that one?
not yet, but it's
it's really
in
good.
my TBR podcast.
It's really detailed. I really liked it. But I don't have many highlights. The New Yorker anthology of short stories, the 100-year anthology of short stories, was quite good. So question number 2. Oh, how did the two of you meet? Why do you think you
Aw.
became such great friends? Oh.
Oh.
I used to work at Barnes & Noble. The old Barnes & Noble doesn't exist anymore in downtown Boston. And that is where I met you.
I literally remember
This isn't going to be
a
good.
memory of Steve before we actually met, because I went to the Barnes and Noble to apply for a job, and
Was I acting up?
yeah, well, you were at the information desk.
There was a main information desk on the first floor. It was
Yeah,
my
the back of the first
area.
floor.
I never worked anywhere else, so I just went there.
Yeah, Steve worked at the information desk, and he just made fun of people and occasionally told people where books were. And I went and I asked the manager or I asked someone for an application form, and I filled it out, and then I submitted it. And as I submitted it, Steve was on a rant to another manager or someone, and he said, "And I think we should fire that person, and we can hire this guy." And
I pointed at you just at random.
yeah,
Oh my god!
because I was submitting an application.
Oh my god!
So Steve got somebody fired, and that was the reason I was hired.
Probably I was advocating firing a manager. I didn't care.
Yes.
So,
That's
my.
right. That's right. The manager, when I first started working, he said, "I'm the man." I'm forgetting his name now, but he was a very nice guy. And Steve said, "Yeah, he's the manager. We call him Empty Figurehead."
Oh right, Phil.
Phil.
Right. Phil was his name. He was a wonderful guy. I used to call him the empty figurehead. He loved that. He used to introduce himself to new people by saying, "I'm called the empty figurehead," and I used to compliment him by saying, "Well, you know, you're an empty figurehead, but you're the emptiest figurehead I've ever had." And I used to freak new people out because Phil had one brown eye and one blue eye. And in the mid-'90s, I used to tell new employees that the blue eye could get the internet. Just waiting to see if one of them would approach him and say, I need to check on the subway. Or something like that. And the reason why we became such great friends is because I don't let people go. You're not even here voluntarily today.
No.
I don't let people go. So.
No.
Question number 3. Well, question number 3 is a paragraph. Because Hannah is brainy and an academic. What types of books do you especially enjoy reading? And then then in parentheses, define type of book however you like for extra credit. Do those kinds of books make up the majority of the books you review? Are there particular types of books you love to read but don't like to review? Again, Sam writes every week about contemporary fiction with almost no exceptions. The exceptions are a joy when you go off reservation, when you write about something older.
Yeah.
Or write a whole review about one book that just happens to be tangentially literary. I love that.
I will occasionally review poetry. When I say occasionally, I've done it like 5 times, but it terrifies me every time.
But every once in a while, you'll do a contemporary fiction adjacent thing.
Yeah.
Like that new Zachary Leader book that's coming out about Elman's James Joyce. You could pitch that.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
yeah.
even though it's not a piece of fiction, but he mostly writes about contemporary fiction. And I would imagine since there's so much of it that largely governs what you read.
What do you mean?
Because in terms of what you read for review. The question's asking,
yeah.
Do the kinds of books that you enjoy reading make up the majority of the books you review?
Yeah, everything is out of balance with me in terms of my reading. Like I haven't read a proper full-length volume of history for I don't even know how long, which is sad because I used to read it all the time.
But in your case, it's literally because you can't budget the time.
Yeah, that's all it is.
Yeah, this question was mostly for Sam, I think, because all of you.
Poetry. I mean, do you don't care? You'll review poetry.
I'll review anything.
Yeah,
sure.
Review anything.
I'll review. I was just about to say I'll review poetry if it's good, but it's not.
Yeah.
So
I still feel that one should know something about poetry if one's going to review it. But.
Yeah, I put you on a different page from the New York Times, where the poetry columnist needs only to know the poet. That's a rant for later tonight when you're not around. My answer to the question you all already know. I'll review anything. Let's see here. Question number 4. The two of you have different reviewing beats as well as different writing styles. That's Hannah being nice. Do you also have different writing processes? Different writing talents and skills, different struggles. Somewhere in the back of Sam's mind, he is laughing at the conjunction of writing struggles and Steve, because Steve does not have writing struggles. You pick and peck. I've seen you compose stuff. You agonize. You chin stroke, pick and peck. You still do that? You still work like that?
Yeah.
I don't do that. I remember a long time ago, who was it? John? We were meeting at a restaurant. John brought out a piece of work that he wanted us to just spontaneously review. And I was writing so hard on the table that the glasses were shaking. And you had barely anything written by the time it was all over. But better things to say about it than I did. Yeah, we have different writing processes. Definitely. Not really different beats anymore. Because I'm not really in the pitching and submitting game anymore.
The pitching and submitting game.
I was for a long time, but I don't like it. I like it. Of course, you like, if your review appears in the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post. That's nice. That's a nice feeling. But all the rest of it, I mean.
How about this for a variation on this question? Do you, when you sit down and you write the review, have you already written it in your head before?
I have.
Yeah.
So, if I haven't written the words themselves, although I can hold about 1,000 words, exactly in rhetorical position, but I don't often do that. If I haven't done that, I certainly know what I think. I know how I want to open the piece, the points I want to make, and how I want to end the piece. I just don't know the actual words.
So I think that increasingly I have learned to do that more and more. I've conjured my inner Steve, where the days before I am trying to write as much as I can.
You write it mentally.
Mentally.
Yeah, you map it out at least mentally.
So that then you're really just figuring out the wording and the transitions.
Right. Well, that's what I was going to say. One of the reasons I brought up the whole pitching thing is because you deal with deadlines. I don't deal with deadlines anymore. And with deadlines, I would think it would be lethal to sit down without having done that mental prep work, and you just, I have no idea what I'm going to write now. I would think that would be lethal.
What I used to do, this was the process. I used to read all the books, and you keep notes while you do it. And then the day before, I would go through and I would type out all of the notes. And in typing out the notes, I would start to coalesce a concept of how I was going to do it. And then I would have all the notes, and then I would have my sort of early outline, like fragments of ideas. And then I could start on the piece doing all that. But now I do more and more of that mentally, just while reading it.
Is the reason that you partially reworded the question because you despise Hannah?
No, I thought, her questions are good. They could use a little massaging in some places.
It was a good effort.
Yeah, but as a first draft.
Oh, no. Trouble in Brainiac land. All right, let's see here. Question number 5. Do you enjoy writing negative reviews? Why or why not?
Of course.
Of course. Yes. Got to be careful, though.
Is there anyone subscribing to Steve's channel who doesn't like negative reviews? Can't be.
I'm sure they like reading them.
Yeah.
But if you haven't tried it, a lot of people think it must be easy to do.
But that whole question that inflames the internet, should you write negative reviews or not, that doesn't show up on your channel, right?
Not really, no. They all know the hymn book that I'm singing from here.
Yeah.
But you've got to have your ducks in a row with a negative review, more than you do with a positive one. If you write a positive review of a book, a blandly positive thing, no one's going to care if you're getting, Aunt Lulu's age wrong or any other little detail wrong. They're not going to care because you're largely praising the work.
And having that insider knowledge, because you know that if you have not been rigorous, you have to err toward being positive.
Right.
So when you read reviews and they are sort of blandly positive, you might think, well, it could be that this person just had a blandly positive reaction to the book, but it could also be that this person was distracted, didn't have a lot of time, had to turn it out quickly, and therefore had to shape it in that you can't rave about something if you're not
rave about it.
If you don't really have thoughts about it, but you also can't pan it. So you just become blandly positive.
Yeah.
And that is the default mode for when you have written a really distracted review.
It's the default mode for way too much published reviews. Way too many of them are like that.
Yeah.
You are within your rights to be a little distrustful of that. That's why, Sam and I, in videos like this, we always say the key is to find the writers you can trust, rather than just trusting a fiction review or whatever, because you don't know the conditions that it's written under. But if you're going to tear something apart, you have to know the book really well. You have to be on perfectly solid ground. And I say that only, is it just a Wild West freelancer? Usually in the freelancing world for other venues, for venues that are not your own, usually the reviewer won't want you to tear it. The editor won't want you to tear it apart. I've heard that from so many editors saying, "Oh, we have so little space. Why not bury the book in silence if it's that bad, rather than waste our space tearing it to pieces?" So if you find a hatchet job in a print journal of some kind or other, that might be a reviewer to watch, or at the very least a journal to watch, because that means either the editor and the writer have a symbiosis working out that will get you honest reviews, or the editor doesn't mind. No matter who's writing the review, they don't mind running a negative thing. That's valuable, because that's rare.
Yeah. And I think also a rave, if it seems like a substantive rave, because then the reviewer is sort of putting their taste really out in the open. They're sort of really saying, I stand behind saying that this book is
it's a bigger risk,
good and important, and it really exposes something about my judgment. If I'm going to really, some people just say everything is compelling and irresistible or whatever, and those are just empty.
Your editors, I've noticed your editors don't mind if he usually does roundups of 3 books, and your editors don't mind if you damn one of them to
they don't
perdition. They don't mind at all, because
they don't.
You know what you're talking about. So.
Yeah, they have no tender feelings in particular toward contemporary fiction. They don't care.
If any of them out there haven't guessed who your employer is, they can by now, I'm sure. Let's see here. Number 6 is also a block of prose. Here, let's read through it. Both of you are book reviewers who typically write relatively short pieces about new releases, but both of you have written longer form pieces. How do they differ? Does writing a longer piece change your writing process? The kinds of things you discuss in the review? Do you prefer writing one length over the other?
They're very different.
You just wrote a longer piece.
Yeah, first time in a long time. It was hard.
Yeah, lots of old muscles.
But
old muscles that you used to use regularly, because Sam and I used to write longer works every month for Open Letters Monthly. A long time ago.
That is really how I started. I wrote some shorter things originally, but when I started writing consistent book criticism, it was for Open Letters Monthly. It was with you, and we were writing one piece a month, and it was about 4,000 words. It was a really long piece, and if you're doing that on work of fiction, you don't just do it on the book. You read all of the books by that author or something. You have some
and their biography and all that sort of. There's a soup to nuts type of thing. The type of thing you get in the London Review books or the New York Review books. Something really long.
Exactly. Those were the models by which we were copying. And it's great to do that. It's just so involving, and you think so much more deeply because it takes most people longer. I would venture that even it takes longer. It's something that you thought about a lot more. You read
absolutely
a lot more.
I wrote 1,500 words today. It took me 25 whole minutes. It was an eternity. The longer pieces for me were not occasions for me to think more deeply about the work. They gave me more room for jokes. What has been demeaningly referred to, I won't point out the source, as Borscht Belt humor. I got more room to do that in a longer piece. And oh my God, there is no thrill in the world like doing a soup to nuts, complete fire and brimstone takedown of a book at 2,000 words instead of 800 words. There's no feeling in the world like that. Oh my God. But again, it's got to be extra careful. But it's not any different a process, right? It's just...
The process is still just reading and thinking and taking notes and developing an idea and developing an argument and a narrative and a critical narrative. But you do it for so much longer that it becomes more immersive. You know that thing where you're just thinking about an idea and then everything you read somehow you're so deep into the idea that you see connections with all sorts of stuff everywhere.
Unfortunately, I do.
And it's a very intellectually exciting thing when you're sort of deep in this conceptual stew, and then you read something completely unrelated, but then you think, wow, that actually is related in some way. And it's only when you're really thinking hard about something, and a short review, you don't get to that state.
But there are largely fewer commercial venues for that sort of thing, right? People are mostly... You have to go to Substack for that. A lot of writers go to Substack because they can write whatever they want at whatever length they want, and they cultivate an audience that will read that.
Yeah, but do you think it's the same? Because I don't know. I still identify Substack with blogs, and sometimes there is a kind of a formal rigor to blog writing, but blog writing is also just more sort of like, here's what I think about this, here's what I think
don't know.
about this.
I could probably stand to read a lot more Substack than I do. A lot more stuff on Substack.
Yeah, me too.
Than
Yeah,
I do.
you're right. I don't know.
I get the feeling that it's much more formalized and forward-facing than the old blog sphere used to be, where that was really like a public diary.
Yeah.
Whereas these are
more like
I don't know. I could be wrong. I haven't read enough of it, but they seem the places like Substack, especially Substack, seem like more an answer to the professional publishing world of periodic pieces, rather than Blogspot seemed like an answer to like MySpace or something like that.
Yeah,
it seemed like they're coming from different directions to do different things.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's see here. Question number 7 is: do you ever get thank you notes from authors after you review their books? Do you ever get fan mail from the people who regularly read your reviews?
I don't get fan mail, but
you have dedicated readers. You must be aware of that. People who
occasionally
never miss what you write.
Occasionally I get an email, yeah.
I would imagine, too, that
not from the authors.
You must get... If you get any mail from authors, it's from people telling you that you are making them a better writer. It must be. You're that kind of a reviewer.
Well, I don't...
Nobody's ever written to me said I make them a better writer. Never. They will sometimes... People will sometimes write to me and thank... Authors will sometimes write to me and thank me for reviewing their book. You know, this was an intelligent review. This book has not been much reviewed. I'm glad that it fell into your hands or whatnot, but you point out things that can make a writer better. You're one of those critics. You don't ever hear from people like that? There are a couple of people writing today, winning major book awards, who are better writers because of you. I feel certain I've seen that. It can't be a coincidence that 10 years ago you're the only critic to review their book, and you pointed out something they do that's dumb, and then they stop doing it. That can't be a coincidence.
I like to think that. I mean, it's the really gratifying thing is when you you get in early on something. You read a first book and you think, well, that's really talented, and then they become, then they become recognized as being a really good writer, and then you get to tell yourself, oh, well, that's, I was there, it really helped that I noticed their talent really early. That's the sort of delusion.
You read a brand new writer, you think they're really talented, everybody needs to know about this, and then Scott Esposito claims the credit. That's coming up later tonight, too. Notice the look of joy. We'll hit the greatest hits, don't you worry. Anyway, let's see here. Question number 8. You two not only write, but also read lots of book reviews. What makes an ideal review? And totally aside from the quality of the review, are there any quirky particular things you especially enjoy in reviews? That opens a question right away that I could ask you myself. How many book reviews do you read? Do you read lots of book reviews?
Yeah, I read a lot of book reviews.
You link to a lot of them on Blue Sky.
On Blue Sky.
So you do find them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm like you. I subscribe to periodicals that have book reviews, like the London Review of Books, like the New York.
Yeah, you want to know what people are doing.
The New Yorker,
what they're talking about.
Book Forum just had a new issue, which is great. Granta and the Yale Review and Baffler, and there's a lot of places that have that, and Harper's.
Yeah, long, medium, and short reviews.
Yeah.
All sorts of things. And some of them are open marketplaces. They don't have a regular stable of old faces, so you never know who you're going to see in them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what makes them good? There's a million ways to skin a cat, to write a good
It'd be
review.
easier to say what makes a bad review, I think.
Yeah.
A book summary is a bad review.
A book summary is a bad review. Yeah. Yeah. And the most, if we're talking about sort of like long magazine reviewing, a lot of it is really good. When it goes wrong, it's often because it becomes like a personal essay in some ways. That's the current pitfall, I think. Where it starts with, when I was 12, I did this.
Yeah.
And you think, okay, you can do that for a paragraph, but you got to get us somewhere. And then, you realize they're just constantly going back to when they were 12. And the book will show up sometimes, or there'll be Or the other thing that happens a lot is they'll sort of be like, and then I read the second chapter and I thought this, and then I read the third chapter of this book and I sort of changed and it's like they're giving you a running commentary on their personal experience of reading the book. That sort of like personal fusion of personal essay with criticism, I think, gets a little out of control. But I mean, that can be done well, and there's so many ways to write a good review. You just have to have good writing and a point of view.
I largely agree. Question number 9. Any good stories about meeting writers you admire or don't admire? Are there any authors you'd like to meet but haven't yet? You don't go out.
No. I was gonna say this. I don't meet them.
You are the highest profile fiction reviewer in the English-speaking world. You don't go out. You don't go out at all.
No.
There are literary launch parties happening tonight in Dumbo, and you're here. We should both be there. You're here instead.
No, I don't go out. Occasionally, I emailed you about this. Occasionally, I'll get invited to a book launch party for like a cookbook or something, and it'll be like it's somebody's Greenwich Village brownstone apartment or something. I'd be like, I should go to this. I could go to a cookbook launch. That'd be fun.
The reason he's specifying that with a stress is something you've probably heard from or read about from reviewers before, which is a leeriness of meeting the authors you're going to review.
Yeah,
a cookbook author, you'd be free to do that.
Right.
Are you leery of meeting, for instance, a current working novelist?
Yeah.
I myself don't know why you would be.
It's never really an issue, but then you do have to think, like, did I say something rude about this person's book? But I don't know. It's usually not an issue, but it does require socializing, which I just don't do.
I don't socialize at all, so no, no, absolutely not. And what about authors that you would like to meet?
I don't know.
There's none for me.
Do you like to meet them?
No, I don't.
Honest to God,
I like to meet them on the page.
Honest to God, exactly. I don't know how I've created this thing, but there is something magical about a work of art to me, where I'll meet the person who made it, and I don't even consider them the person who made it.
No, I agree completely.
I think that a person is just a boring person, and then they do something while they're making it, and no one can see it, and they can't even hardly see it.
Judging from how poorly they describe it, I don't think they know what it is.
And they create this thing, but it's not like, sometimes they're just, they can be interesting people, just unrelated to the fact that they've made great art. But to me, it's not, I don't know, to me there is no correspondence between the person who made the art and just the person.
I've almost never known there to be a correspondence.
Which doesn't, I don't think it makes any sense, but it's just the way I have to think about things. I can't be thinking about them as like people who are trying to pay their kids' childcare and
right, where your review might make a difference to that sort of thing. You can't think about that. Absolutely not. I've only known rare exceptions. Julia Child was every bit as bubbly and happy in person as everything she ever wrote was. Stephen Jay Gould was every bit as endlessly energetic and interesting and interested in everything as everything he ever wrote was, but usually not. Usually you meet an author and they're just some smelly schmuck.
Yeah. And which all that does is play up even more the fact that there is something sort of magical happening when they are working on what they're doing, when they're in the depths of whatever act of creation that they're working on, which I think anyone watching this could feel that in some way. When you get possessed by something that you're creating, you are not entirely yourself.
In her crankier moods, Hannah would say that something else is either a wife or a daughter. And I'm not 100% sure she's wrong. Right. But let's see here. Oh, we're at question number 10. All right, so with 30 minutes, we're almost done. Question number 10. Finally, are there any forthcoming books that especially excite you? Anything forthcoming for you that you're looking forward to? I haven't read it yet. I'm looking forward to Rick Atkinson's new book about the American Revolution, second book in his series about the American Revolution. First one was so good. Oh goodness. Hi, baby. How you doing?
Well,
Woman,
yeah,
you
there
can't
are.
go over there, little girl. He's already over there. You've done this before.
I have to. I don't remember, so I have to.
She keeps trying to go over there and snuggle with Sam, but if you can't tell, Sam is a bunch of coat hangers in a plastic trash bag. He doesn't have a lap. She
tries.
keeps going over there and looking for his lap.
And
but
she just kind of stands there.
right, she's looking
can't
around
sit.
for something. I am almost entirely lap. So she's accustomed to that. Oh, now you're throwing a temper tantrum? Oh, you are. You're such a brat.
What is coming up that seems interesting? Well, Abdul Razak Gurna has a new book.
You did such a great piece on him.
I really liked his last book. He's the recent Nobel winner. His book is called Theft.
Well, did we? I forgot where we landed on the subject. Are you going to do the Ron Chernow Twain book?
I don't think so, but someone will do it. It looks really interesting. I would like to. You've already read it, haven't you?
I read it. I will read it again. It's a weird case. That book is a weird case.
Really?
It is quite good. It is quite strong.
Huh.
But Ron Power's book is so great.
Well, I have
it
read
is
that.
So great.
Yeah.
It's not static. It's not just sitting there on the page. It's telling stories.
Well, it made him Twainian. Maybe Ron
Yeah,
Powers
it made Ron Powers Twainian.
Maybe
Right.
he was Twainian all the time, but he definitely accessed that from him. And it's true that that's not a Chernow register.
It's not a Chernow register,
being
and
Twainian.
also, not to be, I don't want to be invidious or anything here, but I think that Chernow would be a little insulted, thinking, well, why should I be Twainian? Why can't he be Chernowian? You get
well, he
Hamilton under your belt.
right? Exactly. He shouldn't try to be Twainian. Right. He shouldn't change his style or his voice. Yeah, that's interesting. Laurent Binet has a new book, Perspectives. I loved Civilizations. I don't know if
I
you
loved
read
it. I did. I've never missed anything by this author. I think he's incredible.
Yeah, Civilizations. Look that up. It's an absolutely amazing book, and it's also a great book to read in order to tell people about it at dinner parties, because it's such a good premise, and like it's amazing book just to explain what it is. So I'm going to read his new one. So yeah, so I look forward to that. And speaking of Substack, this is the thing I mentioned before.
Oh, right.
There's a guy named John Pistelli who wrote a novel, who serialized it on his Substack, and it is being published, and it's called Major Arcana. And I haven't read anything.
And as far as we know, do you know who it's being published by? Do you have a note there?
Yes, Belt Publishing, which is a small Midwest-based indie
But as
press.
far as we know, this is the first time that a Substack novel has been published as a book.
To my knowledge, it is, but that could be wrong.
It immediately made me think of serializing fiction on my own Substack. I should certainly be happy to do that. So there you go. Those are Hannah's questions. For Sam, my friend and fellow critic. So that's it. We've organized
felt like a lot of blathering. Is that a usual amount of blathering?
on my channel. Oh
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, good.
Oh yes. You'd be talking about tonal register. You'd be totally discordant if you didn't do that.
Okay, good.
Yesterday, Zach and I blathered for 40 minutes.
Okay, good.
But now we've organized the galley copies. That's a tradition. Sam doesn't come up often at just the right time to do that. But now all the March stuff is all neatly organized, and now it's time to settle in.
Yep. A whole night of reading Romantasy ahead of us.
Well, there'll be some High School Musical.
Okay, good.
Because after all, we're all in this together. You could all send him sympathy notes. Bye, BookTube.